episode. This week, gentlemen, the name on the marquee has got to be Vicente Luque, who this past weekend at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada, defeated the living legend Rafael dos Anjos by a unanimous decision. The scorecards read 49-46, 48-47, and 48-47. All three judges for Luque. Mark, let's start with you. Give us your take and your impression of this signature win by Vicente Luque over the always tough, always dangerous legend in RDA.
So first off, I am a little bit pissed to say that I did not get a chance to rewatch this fight. I always try to rewatch these fights that come down to scoring for you guys. But as we were mentioning in the beginning of this show, we've had a bit of a crazy week. I've had a bit of a crazy week, I should say, and I couldn't find the time. And I really wanted to because I do think this fight was interesting to score, even though it felt like a Luque win, because I think rounds 2 and 4 were certainly Vicente Luque rounds. And live, I did think he won the fight. But I really thought all three of 1, 3, 5 were close enough that I was like, man, I kind of want to watch that again and just see how I would score them. And then I see on MMA Decisions, there's a good chunk of people scoring these rounds for RDA. So I'm really curious to do a rewatch, and I do apologize to those listening that I didn't get to do that. But with all that said, this really was an interesting fight. First off, RDA just always hangs. Like, even when he's up at welterweight against killers like Luque, like, not saying he can't be finished, because obviously we've seen, Fiziev do that. Eddie did it back in the day. Granted, he rarely does get finished. But no one is ever outclassing RDA. He hangs with anyone and everyone. He's just so well-rounded. He's so comfortable in the fight. And he showed that again here against a bigger, stronger, more powerful guy in Luque. And as for Luque, to come back and fight the way that he did when he wasn't sure if he was ever even going to fight again, thanks to a brain hemorrhage, is unbelievable. It was probably the best defensive wrestling and defensive grappling that we've ever seen from Vicente Luque, and offensive wrestling and grappling, for that matter. I don't know why I'm only saying defensive, because there was quite a bit of offense as well in that area. The arm drag that DC was raving about in round 3 was a real shining moment for Luque. I loved that too. You could point to the Chiesa fight for him where he was really slick in the grappling too, but that was a lot quicker. This was like a true sustained effort out of him for 25 minutes, committed to wrestling and grappling. And I think it was a statement from him about the way that he's working to improve his own game and become a more well-rounded threat. Like, he got beat by Bilal in that area. Against Jeff Neal, he was losing on the feet. He didn't really have a way to change the fight. So I think he consciously tried to work on that part of his game and tried to lean on it here. And he did well. So, as I said, I do want to rewatch this. I still think I will. Maybe I'll have a comment as we open the show next week. But regardless of that, this was a strong performance from Vicente Luque, a big way for him to bounce back after a couple losses. And it may not have been the game plan we expected, but he basically beat RDA at his own game, which says a lot.
Okay, Omar, let's bring you in here. Give us your take of, what were the key to victories for Vicente Luque in getting this win over RDA?
Well, I mean, RDA is the type of guy that has that championship experience, and I think the thing that I love about RDA the most is how he can kind of weather the odds, right? Like, Vicente Luque looked bigger than RDA, almost not thicker, but bigger, just generally. And I think you could see the size played a certain factor when it came to the grappling in that fight as well. But RDA knows how to fight, right? Like, he knows how to put things together. He knows the fight IQ that RDA has in order to try to win rounds, I think, is pretty high. But Luque was no slouch, man. He's just as good on the ground, I think, he is on the feet, and he is a killer on the feet. RDA is just really good, and I think that if RDA went back down to 155, I think he would be able to do more damage than he would at 170. And that's saying a lot, because he's still very good at 170 pounds. I was impressed by the fight overall. I also think that round 3 for me was the toss-up round. I think 2 and 4 go to Luque, and I thought 1 and 5 went to RDA. But it was a close fight. It was a lot closer than I thought it was going to be honest. I thought the size and the power difference from Luque would have played a lot more into the result. But RDA did work, man. It was a great performance on both of them.
It was interesting to see RDA kind of get RDA'd. I mean, down at lightweight, I feel like this is the kind of fight that RDA would usually kind of execute on his opponents at 155. But now, being only 5'8" at 170 pounds seems to be a bit of a disadvantage for RDA, especially at this stage, later stage in his career, against a guy in Vicente Luque, who is officially listed at, I believe, 5'10" or 5'11". Yeah, to your point, he just seemed like the bigger guy. It's weird to see somebody who seems stronger than RDA in the ring, because, again, especially at lightweight, he always seemed like he had the strength advantage. Like, he would just kind of dad dudes in the cage, and it seems to be that's what he tasted this past weekend. So let's talk about Vicente Luque now, where he could go from here. He's back in the win column after dropping 2 fights in a row to Bilal Muhammad and Jeff Neal. His record now stands at 22-9, and it needs to be mentioned that he is 2-0. He's batting 1,000 when facing former UFC champions, now with wins over both Tyron Woodley and RDA. So, Mark, what do you think is next for Vicente Luque? Put on your UFC matchmaker hat. Who would you match him up with next?
I don't know where exactly to go with him, to be honest. There's no one above him currently that really makes a ton of sense, other than the man who's only one spot above, which is Sean Brady. Also, it's so dumb that he's ranked above Vicente Luque, but I digress, and I won't go down that rabbit hole right now. So, yeah, maybe you can go Luque versus Brady. I don't know when Brady's back exactly. Either that, or maybe you end up using Luque as the next step up for that newly booked Kevin Holland versus Jack Della Maddalena fight.
Okay, like it. Omar, any other ideas?
Are you talking about like him getting the winner of Jack Della Maddalena, Kevin Holland, or the loser, or?
Oh, did I leave it? I thought I said the next step up for the winner of that fight. Did I not say that? My bad.
Yeah, maybe I didn't understand it. Yeah, I mean what was the first one that you said there? The Sean Brady one was the one that I had in my head, and I don't know what's going on with Sean Brady. I'm not really sure what his update is, but there's just so much stagnation in the welterweight division right now, and I think eventually things will start to clear up, especially once all these fights end up happening before the end of the year. But as of right now, Sean Brady's just kind of the one that makes sense. I doubt that'll be the case in the next four months or so.
Also, I stand corrected. He did lose against Leon Edwards, but I did say, to be fair, I did say former champions, and Leon Edwards was not a champion when he lost to Leon Edwards, so I'm still right.
That's correct.
Let's talk about RDA. RDA, he's a welterweight now. He's probably among the smallest welterweights in the division. He's also 38 years old, and his record stands at 32-15. He's back in the loss column. He's been sort of pinballing back and forth between loss, win, loss, win, loss. Omar, let me start with you this time. Do you see RDA sticking around 170? And if so, who would you want to see him fight next?
Honestly, I'm not really sure what his motivation is at this point, because if he's trying to go for a belt, I don't see that happening anytime soon. So if he's here for a paycheck and just to kind of keep active and keep looking good and, kind of whatever happens, I would think a fight between him and Randy Brown could be very interesting at this point in both of their careers. I would be very down for that.
Like it. Mark, any other bright ideas for RDA?
So he did say when he came back up to welterweight that he was realizing he was getting older and that maybe he was not going to be a champion again, and that he just wanted to not be cutting the weight and kind of have funner type fights. So he did seem to accept that. So I think he probably stays up at welterweight. I don't see why he would go back down. So yeah, he's hard too, because I really wanted to find another veteran to be put these two near legendary guys across the cage from each other, but there's no one that really fits that bill at welterweight that he should be fighting right now. So instead, I was just thinking maybe now he's the one that gets Michelle Pereira, since the Wonder Boy fight fell apart, or even a Li Jingliang. I think he's going to kind of just be this guy now where he fights guys like Pereira or the Leech who are trying to break through, and they got to show they can beat an RDA.
Wow, I feel like Pereira would just tower over him, man.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, Luque looked bigger, but Pereira's Pereira's like 6'2"? Michel Pereira? You
No, I don't think he's that tall.
don't think he's 6'2"? He seems like such a giant at
I feel
welterweight.
like he's like around there.
I mean, as of
He's
late,
6'1",
he
you're
can't even
close.
he
Wow.
can't even make welterweight lately. So my man's middleweight. Yeah, the last wins for RDA were Brian Barberena at welterweight. He submitted him, and then Hanata Moicano, which was a catch weight I'm seeing at 160, which makes me think, is RDA one of those guys who will go down as like could have been a fantastic 165er?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah, he got screwed for sure.
Yep.
And for that matter, so did Kevin Lee. I think Kevin Lee would have been a great 165 pounder.
Totally.
Yep.
Totally.
He's one of the poster boys for that division.
For sure.
Division.
Yeah.